In a small, forgotten village nestled at the foot of towering mountains, life was simple but hard. The village, barely visible on most maps, was home to less than 100 families who depended entirely on their modest farms and occasional odd jobs to survive. Among them lived Aaron, a 19-year-old boy with sun-kissed skin, calloused hands, and a heart full of dreams that seemed impossible to achieve. His father had passed away years ago in an accident while working in the fields, leaving behind his mother, Radha, and their tiny mud brick house. Since then, Arun had taken up the responsibility of being the sole breadwinner for his family. The days were long, filled with back-breaking work under the scorching sun or chilly winds, depending on the season. Arun would wake up before dawn every morning, milk their cow, fetch water from the nearby well, and tend to their patch of land where they grew vegetables. Whatever extra money he could earn came from helping neighbors repair fences, carrying heavy sacks of grain to the market, or doing other odd jobs around the village. Despite their struggles, Radha always reminded him to be grateful for what they had. "We may not have much," she would say, "but we have each other, and that is enough." One evening, as the golden rays of the setting sun painted the sky orange and pink, the villagers noticed something unusual. Dark clouds began gathering ominously over the distant peaks, moving faster than anyone expected. The air grew heavy, and the wind picked up, rustling through the trees and sending shivers down everyone's spines. It wasn't long before the first drops of rain fell, cold, sharp, and relentless. Within minutes, the drizzle turned into a downpour, drenching everything in sight. The elders of the village gathered near the central square, their faces etched with worry. They knew all too well the dangers of such storms. The river that flowed peacefully beside the village during normal times could quickly turn into a raging beast when fed by excessive rain. Flash floods were not uncommon in this region, and they often brought destruction in their wake. Children clung to their parents, animals huddled together, and even the strongest men looked uneasy as the sound of thunder echoed across the valley. Aaron stood outside their little hut, watching the chaos unfold. His heart raced as he thought about the warnings the elders had given earlier that day. He glanced inside to see his mother securing the wooden shutters of their windows, her hands trembling slightly. "Aaron," she called out, her voice laced with concern, "come inside. It's too dangerous to stay out there." But Aaron couldn't shake off the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. He remembered his father's old rope, coiled neatly in a corner of the shed. It was frayed in some places, but still strong enough to hold weight if needed. Without saying a word, he grabbed the rope and slung it over his shoulder. Radha saw him and rushed to the doorway. "Where are you going?" she asked, panic rising in her tone. "I'm going to higher ground," Aaron replied firmly. "If someone gets caught in the flood, I might be able to help." Radha wanted to argue, to beg him to stay safe, but she knew better than to stop him. Her son had inherited his father's bravery and sense of duty, qualities she admired but sometimes feared. She nodded silently, tears welling up in her eyes, and handed him a small lantern. "Be careful, my child," she whispered. "Come back to me." With the lantern in one hand and the rope in the other, Aaron stepped out into the storm. The rain stung his face, and the wind howled like a wild animal. Each step was a battle against nature's fury, but he pressed on, determined to reach the elevated path that led to the hilltop. From there he could survey the area and spot anyone in need of rescue. As he climbed, the sound of rushing water grew louder, drowning out even the thunder. The river had already breached its banks, spilling muddy torrents onto the fields and roads below. Houses closest to the river were beginning to flood, their occupants scrambling to save whatever they could. Cries for help pierced through the cacophony of the storm, urging Aaron to move faster. Just as he reached the top of the hill, he spotted movement along the riverbank, a figure struggling desperately against the current. Squinting through the rain, he realized it was a woman, her arms flailing as she tried to keep her head above water. Without a second thought, Arun tied one end of the rope securely around a sturdy tree trunk and began making his way down the slippery slope toward the river. Every step was treacherous, the wet earth threatening to send him tumbling into the raging waters below. But Arun's focus never wavered. He reached the edge of the bank and threw the free end of the rope toward the woman, shouting at the top of his lungs to get her attention. Miraculously, she managed to grab hold of it just as another wave crashed over her. Using every ounce of strength he possessed, Aaron pulled her closer, inch by agonizing inch, until he could finally drag her onto solid ground. Exhausted and soaked to the bone, Aaron collapsed beside the woman, his chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. She lay motionless, her face pale and lips blue from the cold. Panic surged through him as he checked for signs of life. Relief washed over him when he felt a faint pulse beneath his fingers. Wrapping her in his thin jacket, he lifted her gently into his arms and started the arduous journey back to his hut. By the time he arrived, Radha was waiting anxiously at the door, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of the unconscious woman. Together they laid her on a makeshift bed of blankets and tended to her injuries as best they could. Though weak and frail, the woman stirred briefly, mumbling words they couldn't understand before slipping back into unconsciousness. Little did Aaron know, the woman he had risked his life to save was no ordinary stranger. She carried secrets and stories far beyond the confines of his humble village, and her presence would change the course of his life forever. The storm outside showed no signs of relenting. The rain continued to pour in sheets, drumming against the roof of Aaron's modest hut like an unyielding symphony. Inside, the flickering light of a single oil lamp cast long shadows on the mud walls, barely illuminating the small space where Radha and Arun worked tirelessly to care for the unconscious woman they had rescued. Despite their limited resources, mother and son did everything they could to make her comfortable. Radha wrapped the woman in dry blankets salvaged from their meager collection, while Arun gently wiped away the mud and water caked on her face with a damp cloth. Her clothes were soaked through, so Radha rummaged through their belongings and found an old sari that had once belonged to Arun's late father. It wasn't much, but it would do until the stranger regained consciousness. They carefully changed her into the dry garment, ensuring she remained warm despite the chill in the air. As the hours passed, the woman began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes clouded with confusion and exhaustion. For a moment, she simply stared at the ceiling, trying to piece together what had happened. Then slowly her gaze shifted to Aaron and Radha, who were sitting nearby, watching her intently. "Where am I?" she croaked, her voice hoarse and barely audible over the howling wind outside. "You're safe," Aaron said softly, leaning closer so she could hear him clearly. "We found you by the river. You were caught in the flood." The woman blinked several times as if trying to process his words. She attempted to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her back down. Radha quickly placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Don't try to move too much," she advised kindly. "You've been through a lot." A faint smile crossed the woman's lips, though it was tinged with sadness. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice trembling. "If you hadn't helped me." Her sentence trailed off, but her gratitude hung heavy in the room. Aaron felt a pang of sympathy for her. Whoever she was, she had clearly endured something terrifying. He couldn't imagine how it must have felt to be swept away by the merciless current, completely at the mercy of nature's wrath. Over the next few days, the woman, whom they came to know as Maya, slowly regained her strength. Though still weak, she insisted on helping around the house whenever possible. She peeled vegetables alongside Radha, listened intently as Arun shared stories about village life, and even offered advice when neighbors stopped by seeking guidance on farming techniques or mending tools. Despite her obvious fatigue, there was a quiet determination about her, a resilience that matched the spirit of the villagers themselves. What struck Aaron most about Maya, however, was her curiosity. She asked endless questions about their lives, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. At first he found it strange. No one from the city ever cared about people like them. But Maya seemed genuinely interested, her eyes lighting up whenever he spoke about his dreams of seeing the world beyond the mountains or improving conditions in the village. In return, Maya shared snippets of her own life. She spoke of bustling cities filled with towering buildings, markets brimming with goods unimaginable in their remote corner of the world, and schools where children learned things far beyond basic arithmetic and reading. Aaron listened in awe, his mind painting vivid pictures of these places he had only dreamed of visiting. Yet despite her tales of luxury and adventure, Maya never boasted or acted superior. Instead, she carried herself with humility, almost as if she were searching for something deeper than wealth or status. One evening, as the three sat together eating a simple meal of rice and lentils, Maya turned to Aaron and asked, "Do you ever think about leaving this place, about pursuing something bigger?" Aaron hesitated, glancing at his mother before answering. "Of course I think about it," he admitted. "But my duty is here, for now. My mother needs me, and so does the village. There's work to be done and someone has to do it." Maya nodded thoughtfully, her expression unreadable. "Duty is important," she said after a pause. "But sometimes we owe it to ourselves to dream bigger, to step out of our comfort zones and see what else the world has to offer." Her words lingered in Aaron's mind long after the conversation ended. That night, as he lay on his mat staring at the ceiling, he couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond the horizon. Was there truly a life waiting for him outside the confines of the village? And if so, was he brave enough to pursue it? Meanwhile, Maya wrestled with her own thoughts. Since waking up in Arun's home, she had been overwhelmed by the kindness and generosity of this family who had nothing yet gave everything. She had traveled the world, met countless people, and spent millions on charitable projects, but nothing had touched her heart quite like this. Here was a boy who risked his life to save a complete stranger without expecting anything in return. His selflessness reminded her of values she had almost forgotten in the chaos of her privileged life. As the days turned into weeks, Maya grew stronger, though she made no mention of leaving. Part of her didn't want to go, not yet. There was something profoundly grounding about living among people who valued relationships over riches, who found joy in the simplest pleasures. She knew she couldn't stay forever, but she also knew she couldn't leave without doing something meaningful for the family and the village that had given her a second chance at life. One afternoon, as the storm finally began to subside and patches of blue peeked through the clouds, Maya took a walk with Arun along the edge of the forest. The air smelled fresh after the rain, and birds chirped cheerfully, reclaiming their territory. They walked in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Maya broke the quiet. "Arun," she began, her tone serious yet gentle, "I need to tell you something." He looked at her curiously. "What is it?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "When I'm gone, I want you to remember this. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, can change lives, including your own. What you did for me that day, it meant more than you'll ever know." Aaron frowned slightly, unsure of where this was going. "You don't have to thank me," he said earnestly. "Anyone would have done the same." Maya smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Not everyone would have," she replied. "And because of you, I've seen the kind of person I want to be, a better version of myself." Before Aaron could respond, she added, "I promise you I won't forget this place, or you. When the time comes, you'll understand why." Though her words were cryptic, Arun didn't press her for answers. Something told him that Maya had plans she wasn't ready to share just yet. All he could do was trust that whatever she intended, it would come from a place of gratitude and respect. By the time Maya announced her departure, the village had begun to recover from the aftermath of the storm. Roads were cleared, damaged homes were repaired, and life was slowly returning to normal. On the morning of her leave, Arun and Radha accompanied her to the edge of the village where a hired jeep waited to take her to the nearest town. Standing there with the sun rising behind the mountains, Maya turned to face them one last time. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Radha hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Take care of yourself, child," she whispered, "and remember, this will always be your home." Aaron stepped forward next, holding out his hand awkwardly. Maya laughed softly and pulled him into an embrace instead. "Stay strong," she murmured. "Your time will come." With that, she climbed into the Jeep and waved goodbye, disappearing down the dusty road. As Aaron watched her go, he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths would cross again someday. Little did he know, Maya's promise was not just empty words. It was the beginning of a journey neither of them could have anticipated. Life in the village returned to its usual rhythm after Maya's departure. The storm had left its mark, but the resilience of the villagers shone through as they worked together to rebuild what had been damaged. Aaron went back to his daily routine, tending to the fields, helping neighbors with odd jobs, and caring for his mother. Yet, something had shifted inside him. The encounter with Maya lingered in his mind like a distant melody, soft but persistent, reminding him of possibilities he had never dared to imagine. For weeks, Aaron found himself replaying their conversations, especially her cryptic words before she left. "Your time will come." What did she mean by that? Was it just a kind gesture, or was there more to it? He tried not to dwell on it too much, telling himself that life would continue as it always had. But deep down, a tiny spark of hope flickered within him. A hope that maybe, just maybe, his life was about to change. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Aaron, Maya was hard at work behind the scenes. Back in the city, she pored over maps, reports, and plans, her mind buzzing with ideas. She couldn't stop thinking about the village, the simplicity of its people, their unwavering spirit, and the stark contrast between their lives and the opulence she was accustomed to. It wasn't guilt that drove her, it was admiration. She saw beauty in their struggles, dignity in their perseverance, and strength in their unity. And she wanted to honor that. One evening, sitting in her sleek office overlooking the city skyline, Maya made a decision. She would invest in the village, not out of charity but as a tribute to the values she had rediscovered during her stay there. She envisioned roads connecting the village to nearby towns, schools where children could learn, beyond basic literacy, and clean water systems to ensure no one had to walk miles for a drink. But most importantly, she wanted these projects to empower the villagers, giving them tools to build brighter futures for themselves. The first sign of change came months later, when construction crews arrived in the village. At first, the villagers were skeptical. Who would spend money on a place so remote and insignificant? Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was government aid, others believed it was a wealthy benefactor who wished to remain anonymous. No one suspected that the mysterious woman Arun had saved from the flood had anything to do with it. Arun watched as workers laid down gravel for new roads, erected beams for a school building, and dug trenches for pipelines. His heart swelled, with pride but also curiosity. Why now? Why here? He asked around, but no one seemed to have concrete answers. Even the foremen overseeing the projects claimed they were following orders from higher-ups without revealing details. Then one day, as Aaron walked past the partially built school, he noticed an envelope tucked under a rock near the entrance. Curious, he picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper addressed to him. The handwriting was neat and familiar. "Dear Aaron, I told you your time would come. This is just the beginning. Use this opportunity to dream bigger. For yourself, your family, and your village, you deserve every bit of it. With gratitude, Maya." Beneath her signature was a stamped document, a scholarship offer from a prestigious university in the city. Aaron's hands trembled as he read the letter again and again, his mind struggling to process what it meant. A scholarship? For him? From Maya? It felt surreal, like waking up in the middle of a dream. That night, Aaron showed the letter to his mother. Radha's eyes filled with tears as she hugged him tightly. "She hasn't forgotten us," she whispered. "This is her way of saying thank you." "But why me?" Aaron asked, still bewildered. "There are smarter, more deserving people than me." Radha shook her head firmly. "No, my son. There's no one more deserving than you. You've worked harder than anyone I know, and you've always put others before yourself. If anyone deserves this chance, it's you." Despite his mother's encouragement, Aaron wrestled with doubt. The idea of leaving the village, stepping into a world he knew nothing about, terrified him. What if he failed? What if he disappointed Maya, his mother, and everyone else who believed in him? But then he remembered Maya's words. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, can change lives, including your own. Maybe this was her way of showing him that even the smallest act, a rope thrown into raging waters, could ripple outward in ways he couldn't foresee. As the weeks passed, Aaron began preparing for his journey to the city. Villagers showered him with blessings, offering whatever little they could to help. One neighbor gave him a pair of sturdy shoes, another packed homemade snacks for the trip, and yet another gifted him a scarf to keep warm during colder nights. Their generosity humbled him, reinforcing the sense of community that defined their lives. On the day of his departure, the entire village gathered to see him off. Children ran around laughing, women wiped away tears, and men patted him on the back, wishing him success. Standing beside his mother, Aaron felt a lump rise in his throat. Leaving her behind was the hardest part, but she smiled bravely, masking her sadness. Go, she urged. Make us proud. We'll be waiting for you when you return. With a final wave, Aaron boarded the bus that would take him to the city. As the vehicle rattled down the newly paved road, he looked out the window at the receding landscape of his childhood. The fields, the hills, the river that had once threatened to swallow him whole. For the first time in his life, he felt both fear and excitement coursing through his veins. The unknown lay ahead, vast and unpredictable, but he clung to the belief that he wasn't alone. Maya had given him this chance, and his village had sent him off with their love and prayers. When Aaron finally reached the city, it felt like stepping onto another planet. Towering buildings stretched toward the sky, cars honked incessantly, and crowds moved with purpose along busy streets. Everything was loud, fast, and overwhelming. He checked into a modest hostel arranged by the university and spent his first few days adjusting to the chaos. It wasn't easy, but he reminded himself of why he was there. To create a better future, not just for himself, but for those he had left behind. During orientation week, Arun attended lectures, explored the sprawling campus, and met fellow students from all walks of life. Many of them came from privileged backgrounds, speaking confidently about their ambitions and achievements. At times, Arun felt out of place, like a fish swimming against the current. But whenever self-doubt crept in, he thought of Maya's faith in him and the sacrifices his mother had made. Those thoughts fueled his determination to succeed. Then came the moment he least expected. On the final day of orientation, there was a special event hosted by the university's primary benefactor, a woman named Maya Devi. When Aaron heard the name, his heart skipped a beat. Could it be the same Maya? As he entered the grand hall, packed with students, faculty, and guests, his question was answered almost immediately. Standing at the podium, dressed elegantly yet simply, was Maya. Her presence commanded attention, but her smile remained as warm and genuine as he remembered. When her eyes scanned the crowd and landed on him, they lit up with recognition. She paused mid-sentence, earning curious glances from the audience, before continuing her speech with renewed energy. Afterward, Maya approached him personally, ignoring the throng of admirers eager to speak with her. Arun, she said warmly, extending her hand. It's good to see you again. For a moment, Aaron was too stunned to respond. Then, finding his voice, he stammered, I didn't know it was you. All this time, Maya chuckled softly. I wanted it to be a surprise. Did you really think I'd let someone else take credit for changing your life? Her words brought tears to his eyes, though he blinked them away quickly. Thank you doesn't feel like enough, he admitted. You don't need to thank me, Maya replied gently. You earned this. Remember, it's not just about you anymore, it's about what you choose to do with this opportunity. Over the next hour, they spoke privately in a quiet corner of the hall. Maya shared her vision for the village and explained how she hoped to use her resources to uplift communities like his. She encouraged Aaron to focus on his studies, promising to support him every step of the way. By the end of their conversation, Aaron felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about escaping poverty. It was about becoming someone who could make a difference. As he walked back to his hostel that night, the city lights twinkling above him, Aaron realized something profound. Life had given him a second chance not just to survive but to thrive. And thanks to a billionaire who had once been a stranger and was now a mentor, he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Months turned into years, and Arun's life in the city became a whirlwind of challenges, growth, and transformation. At first, everything felt overwhelming. The towering skyscrapers, the fast-paced lifestyle, the endless sea of faces that blurred together in crowded streets. But as time passed, he began to adapt. The scholarship Maya had arranged for him opened doors he never imagined existed, and with each passing semester, Arun grew more confident in his abilities. The university was a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and aspirations. Students from all over the country and even abroad shared classrooms, libraries, and cafeterias, each bringing their unique perspectives to the table. For someone like Arun, who had spent most of his life in a small village, this diversity was both exhilarating and humbling. He listened intently during lectures, asked questions when he didn't understand, and stayed late at the library poring over books that expanded his horizons. His professors noticed his dedication and encouraged him to aim higher, pushing him to explore fields he had never considered before. Despite the academic rigor, Arun made sure to stay grounded. Every evening after classes ended, he would call his mother back in the village. Their conversations were filled with updates about daily life. He told her about his studies, the friends he was making, and the sights he saw in the city, while she shared news of the village, the progress of the development projects, and how proud everyone was of him. These calls became his anchor, reminding him of where he came from and why he was working so hard. Maya remained a constant presence in his life, though not always physically. She checked in on him regularly, sending emails or calling to ask how he was doing. Occasionally, she invited him to meetings or events related to rural development, giving him glimpses into her world of philanthropy and business. Through these interactions, Aaron learned valuable lessons about leadership, strategy, and the importance of empathy in decision-making. Maya often emphasized that true success wasn't measured by wealth or power, but by the positive impact one could have on others' lives. One day, during his second year at the university, Aaron received an invitation to attend a groundbreaking ceremony for a new community center being built in his village. The project was funded entirely by Maya's foundation, and she wanted him to be there to represent the villagers. It was the first time he would return home since leaving for the city, and the thought filled him with excitement and nerves. When he arrived, the village looked different. Not drastically so, but enough to make him pause. The roads were smoother, lined with newly planted trees. Children ran past him wearing uniforms, heading to the school Maya had helped build. Women gathered around taps connected to the clean water system, chatting and laughing as they filled their buckets. Everything seemed brighter, more hopeful, yet familiar enough to feel like home. The ceremony itself was a joyous occasion. Villagers gathered under a colorful tent decorated with marigold garlands, clapping and cheering as local leaders and representatives from Maya's foundation spoke about the center's purpose: to provide education, healthcare, and vocational training to the community. When it was Aaron's turn to address the crowd, he felt a lump rise in his throat. Looking out at the sea of faces, neighbors, friends, family, he realized how far they had come together. "I stand here today because of all of you," he said, his voice steady despite his emotions. "Because of your kindness, your resilience, and your unwavering belief in a better future. This center is not just a building. It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we work together. And I promise you, no matter where life takes me, I will always carry our village in my heart." His words earned thunderous applause, and Radha beamed with pride from the front row. Afterward, people surrounded him, congratulating him and thanking him for representing them so well. It was a moment of validation, proof that his journey wasn't just for himself. It was for everyone who had supported him along the way. Back in the city, Aaron threw himself into his studies with renewed vigor. Inspired by what he had seen in the village, he decided to focus on sustainable development, learning how to design projects that balanced economic growth with environmental preservation. He joined student organizations focused on social entrepreneurship, attended workshops on innovation, and even started brainstorming ideas for initiatives he could implement in rural areas like his own. But life wasn't without its struggles. Balancing academics, extracurricular activities, and part-time jobs to cover living expenses was exhausting. There were nights when Aaron doubted whether he was cut out for this demanding path. During those moments, he remembered Maya's advice. Duty is important, but sometimes we owe it to ourselves to dream bigger. Those words became his mantra, driving him forward, even when the road felt impossibly steep. As graduation approached, Aaron faced another challenge, deciding what to do next. Job offers poured in from companies impressed by his academic record and extracurricular achievements. Some promised lucrative salaries, others offered opportunities to work abroad, but none of them resonated with him the way Maya's vision did. He wanted to use his education to uplift communities, not chase personal gain. When he confided in Maya about his dilemma, she smiled knowingly. "You already know the answer," she said. "Follow your heart. You don't need my permission to create your own path." With her encouragement, Arun founded a non-profit organization dedicated to empowering rural youth through education and skill development. He partnered with universities, corporations, and government agencies to secure funding and resources, drawing inspiration from the changes he had witnessed in his own village. His goal was simple yet ambitious: to ensure that every child, regardless of their background, had access to opportunities that could transform their lives. The launch of his nonprofit coincided with his graduation ceremony. Standing on stage to receive his diploma, Arun couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. From a poor village boy struggling to make ends meet to a university graduate with a clear sense of purpose, his journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. As he shook hands with the dean and posed for photographs, he spotted Maya in the audience, smiling proudly. Her presence reminded him of the circle that had brought him here, an act of kindness that had sparked a chain reaction of hope and change. That evening, at a celebratory dinner hosted by Maya, Arun raised a toast to everyone who had supported him. "I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for you," he said, looking around the room. "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For showing me that dreams are worth chasing, no matter how impossible they seem." Maya raised her glass in response, her eyes glistening with emotion. "To Arun," she said softly, "and to the countless lives he will touch in the years to come." As the night drew to a close, Arun stepped outside to breathe in the cool air. The city lights twinkled above him, casting a soft glow over the bustling streets. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly at peace. Life had thrown him into the unknown, but he had risen to the challenge, guided by the values instilled in him by his mother and the faith placed in him by Maya. Now, as he prepared to embark on the next chapter of his journey, he knew one thing for certain: his story was just beginning. The years that followed Aaron's graduation were a whirlwind of action, determination, and growth. His nonprofit organization, which he named Sayog, meaning partnership in his native language, quickly gained traction. The name itself reflected his philosophy. Sustainable development wasn't something one person or group could achieve alone. It required collaboration, trust, and shared effort. With Maya's guidance and connections, as well as the support of his mentors from university, Arun built a team of passionate individuals who believed in his vision. At first, running Sayog felt like navigating uncharted waters. Aaron spent countless hours drafting proposals, meeting with potential donors, and traveling to remote villages to assess their needs. Each trip reminded him of his own roots, the challenges faced by rural communities, the resilience of people living on the margins, and the untapped potential waiting to be unlocked. He knew that simply providing resources wasn't enough. True empowerment came from equipping people with skills, knowledge, and opportunities to shape their own futures. One of Sayog's early projects focused on digital literacy. In many villages, access to technology was limited, and even basic computer skills were rare. Aaron partnered with tech companies to set up small training centers equipped with refurbished laptops and solar-powered internet hubs. At these centers, young people learned how to use software programs, create resumes, search for jobs online, and even start small businesses. For many, this was their first brush with the modern world, a gateway to possibilities they had only dreamed of. Word of Sayog's work spread quickly, earning recognition not just locally but nationally. Journalists began writing articles about Aaron's journey, from being a village boy saved by fate during a flood to becoming a changemaker transforming lives across the country. Television crews visited his projects, capturing heartwarming stories of students excelling in school, women starting micro-enterprises, and farmers adopting innovative techniques to increase crop yields. These stories inspired others to contribute, whether through donations, volunteering, or spreading awareness. Despite the growing success, Aaron remained grounded. He often reminded himself, and his team, that their work wasn't about fame or accolades. It was about making a tangible difference in people's lives. Whenever he felt overwhelmed, he returned to his village seeking solace in the simplicity of home. Sitting under the shade of an old banyan tree, watching children play near the newly constructed community center, he found clarity. This was why he did what he did, to ensure that no child grew up feeling trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Maya continued to play a pivotal role in Aaron's journey, though her involvement became less hands-on over time. She transitioned into a mentorship role, offering advice when needed and stepping in to help secure funding for larger initiatives. Yet, her presence loomed large, not because she demanded attention, but because she had taught Aaron the value of humility, perseverance, and integrity. Her belief in him never wavered even when he doubted himself. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, Maya called Arun to check in. They met at her office, a sleek yet welcoming space filled with books, artwork, and mementos from her travels. Over cups of steaming chai, she asked him how he was coping with the pressures of leadership. "It's not easy," Aaron admitted, leaning back in his chair. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough. There's so much more to be done, and it feels like we're barely scratching the surface." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "That's the burden of caring deeply," she said. "You'll always feel like there's more to do because you see the bigger picture. But remember, every life you touch creates ripples. Those ripples grow into waves, and those waves can change entire oceans." Her words struck a chord within him. It wasn't about perfection or achieving everything overnight. It was about consistency, patience, and faith in the process. That conversation stayed with Arun, anchoring him whenever self-doubt crept in. As Sayog expanded, Arun faced new challenges. Balancing innovation with sustainability proved difficult, especially when working in areas with limited infrastructure. There were setbacks, projects delayed due to unforeseen obstacles, funds falling short, and occasional resistance from communities skeptical of outsiders promising change. But Aaron approached each hurdle with resilience, learning along the way. He realized that listening was just as important as acting. Understanding local contexts and building trust took time, but yielded far greater results in the long run. One of the most transformative moments came when Sayog launched its flagship initiative, a scholarship program modeled after the one that had changed Aaron's life. Funded partly by Maya's foundation and partly by corporate sponsors, the program identified talented students from underserved backgrounds and provided them with full scholarships to pursue higher education. The selection process was rigorous, focusing not just on academic merit but also on character, determination, and community involvement. When the first batch of scholars gathered for orientation, Aaron couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Standing before them, he saw reflections of his younger self, bright-eyed, eager, and hungry for opportunity. As he addressed the group, sharing his own story and encouraging them to dream boldly, he noticed tears streaming down some of their faces. It was a humbling reminder of the power of hope and the impact of opening doors for those yearning to step through. The scholars went on to excel in various fields: engineering, medicine, law, arts, and sciences. Many returned to their communities after completing their studies, using their education to drive positive change. One graduate established a free legal aid clinic in her village, helping marginalized families fight for their rights. Another designed low-cost irrigation systems to combat water scarcity in drought-prone regions. Each success story reinforced Aaron's belief that investing in people was the most powerful form of development. Amidst all the progress, Aaron never forgot his mother, Radha. Though frail with age, she continued to inspire him with her quiet strength and unwavering optimism. Whenever he visited, she would ask about the latest updates from Sayog, her eyes lighting up at stories of children attending school or women starting businesses. "You've made us proud, my son," she would say, patting his hand affectionately. "Your father would have been so happy to see what you've become." Their bond remained the foundation of Arun's life, grounding him in values that transcended material success. No matter how busy he got, he made it a point to spend quality time with her, knowing that her love and sacrifices had shaped him into the person he was today. Years later, when Sayog celebrated its 10th anniversary, Arun organized a grand event in the city. Hundreds of beneficiaries, volunteers, partners, and well-wishers attended, coming together to celebrate a decade of collective effort. The highlight of the evening was a surprise guest appearance by Maya, who flew in specially for the occasion. When she walked onto the stage to deliver her speech, the audience erupted into applause, acknowledging the woman whose generosity and vision had sparked this movement. "I stand here today not as a benefactor, but as a witness to the extraordinary power of kindness," Maya began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "When I first met Arun, I saw in him qualities I deeply admire: courage, compassion, and an unshakable sense of duty. What started as a simple act of gratitude has blossomed into a legacy of hope and transformation." Turning to Arun, who sat in the front row, she added, "You once asked me why I chose you. The answer is simple: because you chose to save me. That day by the river, you didn't think twice, you acted out of pure instinct, guided by your heart. And that's exactly what you've done ever since, leading with heart and purpose. Never stop believing in the ripple effect of your actions." By the end of her speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Arun stood to thank her, his voice trembling with gratitude. "This journey wouldn't have been possible without you," he said. "But it's not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who has contributed, sacrificed, and believed in our mission. Together we've proven that change is possible, no matter how daunting the odds may seem." As the celebration drew to a close, Aaron stepped outside to take a breath of fresh air. The night sky stretched endlessly above him, dotted with stars that seemed to twinkle in approval. He thought about how far he had come, from a poor village boy struggling to survive to someone capable of inspiring thousands. Yet he knew this wasn't the end. It was merely another milestone in a lifelong commitment to service. Looking ahead, Arun envisioned expanding Sayog's reach, tackling issues like climate change, healthcare accessibility, and gender equality. He dreamed of creating a network of empowered communities, interconnected by shared goals and mutual support. And as he stood there, gazing at the horizon, he felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them, not alone, but with the collective strength of those who believed in him and the cause they championed together. Years turned into decades, and Arun's journey became a beacon of hope not just in his village or country, but across the globe. Sayog had grown from a small nonprofit into an international organization, with branches in multiple countries. Its impact was felt everywhere, from remote mountain villages to sprawling urban slums. The ripple effect Maya had once spoken about had transformed into a tidal wave of change, touching millions of lives. Aaron himself had evolved over the years. No longer the shy, uncertain boy who had left his village for the city, he now carried himself with quiet confidence. His face bore lines etched by experience, but his eyes still sparkled with the same idealism that had driven him since the beginning. He had become a symbol of resilience and compassion, often invited to speak at global forums about sustainable development, education reform, and grassroots empowerment. Yet, despite his growing fame, he remained humble, always crediting his success to the people who had supported him along the way. One of the most remarkable aspects of Sayog's growth was how deeply rooted it stayed in its founding principles. Every project, no matter how large or complex, began with listening, understanding the unique needs and aspirations of each community. Whether it was building schools in Afghanistan, training women entrepreneurs in Kenya, or restoring farmlands devastated by floods in Bangladesh, Sayog approached every initiative with care and respect. This human-centered approach earned it trust and admiration worldwide. Back home, Arun's village stood as a testament to this philosophy. Once forgotten and impoverished, it was now thriving, a model of sustainable development. The roads were smooth, lined with solar-powered streetlights. The school Maya had helped build had expanded into a full-fledged institution, offering classes up to high school level. A state-of-the-art health clinic provided free services to villagers, while cooperative farming initiatives ensured fair prices for their crops. Even the river, which had once threatened to destroy everything, had been tamed through eco-friendly flood control measures. Every year, on the anniversary of the day Arun saved Maya, the village celebrated Gratitude Day. It wasn't just a festival. It was a reminder of how acts of kindness could transform lives. Villagers gathered to share meals, sing songs, and recount stories of challenges overcome and dreams fulfilled. For Arun, these celebrations were bittersweet. They reminded him of simpler times, the warmth of his mother's embrace, the sound of rain on their mud roof, the laughter of neighbors sitting around a fire. Radha had passed away peacefully a few years earlier, leaving behind a legacy of love and sacrifice that Arun carried in his heart. Maya, too, had grown older, though her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. She continued to support Sayog, though she joked that Arun didn't need her help anymore. Their bond had deepened over the years, evolving from mentor and protege to something akin to family. When asked about her role in Arun's success, she would smile and say, "I merely planted a seed. It was Arun, and countless others, who nurtured it into a forest." In truth, Maya's influence extended far beyond financial contributions. She had taught Arun to see the bigger picture, to balance ambition with humility, and to lead with empathy. Her belief in him had been unwavering, even during moments when he doubted himself. Together, they had created something extraordinary, a movement powered by hope, collaboration, and shared humanity. As Aaron entered his 50s, he began thinking about the future, not just of Sayog, but of the world he wanted to leave behind for the next generation. He envisioned a planet where poverty was eradicated, where education was accessible to all, and where communities worked together to protect the environment. To achieve this vision, he knew Sayog needed to adapt, embracing new technologies and innovative solutions without losing sight of its core values. One such innovation came in the form of digital platforms designed to connect rural artisans with global markets. Through these platforms, craftsmen and women could showcase their work to buyers around the world, earning fair wages and preserving traditional skills. Another initiative focused on renewable energy, equipping villages with affordable solar panels and biogas systems to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. These projects weren't just about solving problems. They were about empowering people to take charge of their own futures. Despite his accomplishments, Aaron never stopped learning. He traveled extensively, visiting communities impacted by Sayog's work and listening to their stories. Each interaction reinforced his belief in the power of collective action. One particularly memorable trip took him to a small desert town in Rajasthan, where Sayog had introduced drip irrigation systems to combat water scarcity. Farmers there spoke passionately about how the technology had transformed their lives, allowing them to grow crops year-round and improve their incomes. As one elderly farmer put it, "You gave us more than water, you gave us dignity." These experiences fueled Aaron's determination to keep pushing boundaries. He established research centers focused on developing low-cost, sustainable solutions, tailored to specific regions. He also launched leadership programs aimed at nurturing the next generation of changemakers, young people inspired by his story, eager to make a difference in their own communities. By the time Aaron celebrated his 60th birthday, Sayag had touched the lives of over 50 million people globally. The organization's annual report featured photographs of smiling children attending school, women running successful businesses, and farmers harvesting bumper crops. But the image that captured everyone's attention was a simple black and white photo of a young boy holding a rope, standing beside a flooded river. Beneath it was a caption, "It all started with a single act of courage." On that day, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and beneficiaries, Aaron reflected on his journey. He thought about the storm that had brought him and Maya together, the struggles they had faced, and the triumphs they had achieved. Most importantly, he thought about the millions of unsung heroes, teachers, farmers, volunteers, donors, who had contributed to Sahyag's success. Without them, none of this would have been possible. Addressing the crowd gathered to celebrate his milestone, Aaron spoke from the heart. "When I was a child, I dreamed of a better life, for myself, for my family, and for my village. Today, I stand here knowing that those dreams have come true, not because of me, but because of all of you. Together, we've shown the world that kindness has the power to change lives. Let us continue to dream boldly, act courageously, and work tirelessly to create a brighter future for everyone." His words echoed long after the applause faded. That evening, as fireworks lit up the sky and music filled the air, Aaron slipped away to a quiet corner. Looking up at the stars, he felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for what he had achieved, but for the journey itself. Life had taken him from a poor village boy clinging to a frayed rope to a global leader inspiring millions. And yet, at its core, his story was simple. An ordinary person doing extraordinary things, driven by love, compassion, and an unshakable belief in the goodness of humanity. The following morning, as dawn broke over the horizon, Aaron packed his bags for another trip to a remote island nation grappling with rising sea levels. There was still work to be done, battles to fight, and lives to touch. But as he stepped onto the plane, he smiled, knowing that every step forward was a tribute to those who had walked alongside him. And so, the story of Aaron, the boy who rescued a billionaire and sparked a revolution of hope, continued, not as a tale of individual greatness, but as a celebration of collective effort. Because in the end, it wasn't about one person saving the world. It was about millions of hearts coming together, united by the belief that even the smallest act of kindness could set off ripples powerful enough to change the course of history.